Hey everybody, Jeff here with the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream and J-Free 906. And look who's back in the co-host chair. John Edwards. How you doing,
Jeff.
John?
Great. How are you doing, sir?
Oh man, it's been a while since you've been up here with us.
Yeah, I've been involved in pretty intense research, so it keeps going.
Yeah, you've been a busy man, that's for sure. Well, I'll tell you what, we have got a great show lined up for you guys tonight. I tell you, we have had, I got out and I started watching these videos, and because you guys know that I love treasure hunting and metal detecting and all this kind of stuff, I stumbled across these guys and I thought, you know what, I have to have these guys on the show. Great team. We're going to introduce them here in just a couple minutes. As we get rolling here, we got a good crowd already showing up. I hope everything is working.
It's going to be a good one, Jeff. It's going to be
a good
one.
I think so. I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to this. All right, folks, we'll get started here in just a minute and right after this.
Everyone involved in the Oak Island universe is that type of person. You guys, I can tell you're that type of person. You hear a story like this, you latch onto it like a dog, and you're just like, let's go. And yes, it's frustrating. And yes, you want it to be solved tomorrow. And yes, who doesn't want to find a chest of gold? Of course we do. Of course, everyone does. But it doesn't work like that sometimes. These things are hard. And so it's taking what it's taking. And that is, in this case, 10 years.
Right. How does it affect us in changing of the history or getting down to the nitty gritty of the history?
It won't change history. It will explain.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you. That's what I was.
It will explain parts of North American history you've never thought about.
See, I can't. The History Channel could not have come up with a better teaser than we just did right here. So I tell you what, stay tuned, folks, because this is going to be a good one. I can't wait.
This is Robert Clotworthy, the narrator of The Curse of Oak Island. And I have a question for you. Could it be that you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream?
This is a top pocket find, mate, for sure.
All right, we are back, and I'm going to bring up our first guest right here. He is Timothy Draper. He is the man that got this all started. How you doing tonight, Timothy?
Good, Jeff. How about you? Hey, John, how's it going?
Doing fantastic. I'm going to start bringing up the rest of your team here. Now, as I was saying, I found you guys. I was out looking, and, I just love treasure hunting stuff and all of that kind of, thing. And I stumbled across you guys, on YouTube and your Treasures in America and everything. And it was fantastic. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to have these guys come on the show. And lo and behold, here you are. So Timothy, why don't you go ahead and introduce your guys here, and we'll, who am I missing? I'm missing somebody, aren't I? Let's see. Timothy, Mark is here.
I think you got four guys that are going to be on here. By the way, Jeff, thank you for inviting us on. We appreciate it. We're out there, trying to let people know about our show and what we do and who we are. I'm Timothy Draper. I've been a treasure hunter for over 25 years now. That's what I do. This is what I do all day long, researching, hunting for treasures. I've been working with many networks, many different treasure hunting shows, and some adventure shows as well. Some of the major ones that a lot of people watch. And so that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. I'm going to go ahead and let my guys introduce themselves. Mark, let's start with you.
Sure. Hey, thanks, Jeff and John, for having us on. I'm Mark Hoover. I'm out of Florida, and I've been interested in the whole treasure hunting pretty much my entire life, but I really got serious into metal detecting about 11 years ago. I'm also a certified diver. Wow, and nice. My motto is have adventure, will travel. So if it's out there, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that.
Todd, let's go ahead and go with you.
Hello, I'm Todd Anderson. I've been treasure hunting for about 35, 40 years, gold mining, metal detecting, and well, that's about it.
And you're part of the comedy relief, I noticed, because I was going to say during the show, I think it was episode number 2, or I don't remember if 2 or 3, where they kind of left you behind. You were sitting in the ATV, and it was storming, and you're kind of. I'm sorry to be laughing at your expense, but it was hilarious what you were doing out there. We'll get to that as we go along. I'm sorry. But it was great.
I was just having fun. That was
just so everybody knows, you never get to see Todd like that. Hardly ever. Hardly ever. My kids have they've known Todd for a long time. My kids always say, "Oh, we love Todd. He's a great guy." But a lot of people don't see what Todd gave the audience during those episodes. So you're going to want to go see that. Hey, Chooch, go ahead and you introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Chooch. I'm a camera guy. I follow these clowns around and make them look good, and help them find all the treasures, because if it's not on camera, it didn't happen.
That's right.
That's right. We've had to learn that throughout the years. There's been a lot of adventures that a lot of us have been on, and if you don't have a camera guy like Chooch, he's the one that kind of gave us their big push. We've been talking about doing something like this for a long time. We've tried different cameramen, and we would get home after a whole weekend or, several days out in the field, and there wasn't anything that was useful. There wasn't anything that we could really use. The audio was bad, or, the camera guy just couldn't really keep up. Chooch was the camera guy that finally gave us that big push to start showing what we do.
Yep. Yeah. And I tell you what, as I was saying earlier, I went out and I watched, I watched different videos and stuff out on YouTube about treasure hunting and metal detecting and all of that kind of thing. And trying to, learn how to use my Garrett. I got my Garrett right here.
Nice.
And trying to learn how to use this thing, Gypsy. And then, I was talking to Gypsy, Jules, and her and I, got talking, and come to find out that she knows you guys, and she's going to be in episode 4, but and that's not coming out yet. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I was talking to her, and she said, "Yeah, I'm going to be in episode number 4." And I was like, "So you can work with these guys?" And then, and I'm going to her event. She has an event going on March 17th in Kerrville, Texas. If any of you guys are interested, any of the folks watching, if you are interested in metal detecting and you want to check this out, check out her website, Zero Discrimination, and you can see there she has this event going on the 17th. I'll be there. I'll be recording the entire thing, and she's going to teach me how to use this. I've been using metal detectors for a few years, but not this one, not much. And so she's going to teach me on that a little bit. But one thing I did want to mention on this too was that this community of metal detectors and treasure hunters is
metal detectorists.
Metal detectorists, thank you. Is so vast. Last week we had Matt Howell on, of course. Then he was doing the work there on the Beyond Oak Island episode he was on last week. And then I mentioned you guys to him, and he knows you. I didn't realize that. And again, it's all connected. You guys are all connected. Fantastic stuff. Folks, I've got the link down below, several links for Timothy's group, all of their different videos, the book that he's written that I'm sure he's going to talk about here in a minute. Everything's linked down below. You have to check this out. If you're interested in these things at all, and you must be because you're here watching tonight, check out some of these links and check out their videos. Fantastic stuff. It really, really is. And you're going to get an education and see some of the crazy things and the crazy places that they go. One of the guys that's not here tonight is Sean. And Sean, tell us a little bit about Sean, Timothy, if you don't mind. I mean, this guy goes into some dangerous spots, man. I mean,
yeah, so like I mentioned, I've been treasure hunting for 25 plus years. I started off on my own, out there doing it. And I realized a lot of the mentors who taught me, unfortunately they're long gone now, but they passed on a lot of information. But one of those things were a closed mouth and a very tight, small group. Most of them did not go out with partners. They didn't go out with friends. They didn't share their knowledge with the world.
Right.
When they passed on, they left me a lot of their knowledge. And throughout the last 6-7 years, I came to realize I can't do it all by myself. I used to be the guy going through the mine all the time. I used to be the guy trying to, I have my phone like this going, hey guys, I'm over here doing like a 20-second video or 20-second video, and it just wasn't working. And that's when I realized that I needed a team. If I wanted to be serious, if I wanted to be a serious treasure hunter and actually make a difference and make some discoveries in my lifetime, I had to share the wealth, share the interest, share the knowledge, just the everything, and that's where this team came from. So Sean and I used to work together, believe it or not. He was my boss for about 6 years. I was his assistant in construction. So, once we got to know each other, I won't beat around the bush on this one. Me and him kind of collided a little bit that first year. He was my boss. I was this guy that came in with 20 years of construction, and he did it his way. I did it my way. Well, after a year, either you're going to kill each other, or you're going to become friends, right? We actually became friends, and he learned what I do and that I treasure hunt. And he didn't believe it. He's like, no, this is for TVs. This is fictional stuff. And it actually inspired him to want to go out and take professional classes to become a climber. And I was telling him, hey, I'm thinking about making a team. And if you have an interest in climbing, and if that's what you're doing is taking these classes, let's have you start being that guy. I love going in mines, but I'm wearing too many hats. How about you're the mine guy, And so that's how that situation happened with Sean.
I'll tell you what, and watching, and I'm going to show, and I hope you don't mind. I meant to ask you this before we started, but I did steal a couple clips from your videos just to show people. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to show one right now. And this is a look at what Sean, some of the stuff that Sean has to deal with here. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Let me get this one up here. There we go. That's the one I wanted. So here's Sean and there's another picture, and this is a look at his leg, and he's looking down into this. I'm calling it a well. I don't know what the heck this thing is. It was a hole in the ground that you guys found up there in the mountains, and we'll get to where we can explain a little bit about where this was as we go along. But there is him coming back out of the hole. And I've got some more to show in a little bit of some other shots, but this is a brave man right here to go down in those holes like that. Wait till you see some of the other places he went. Now, I'm kind of like that. I kind of like going into those. I like splunking, so I like going into caves and stuff like that. But it's dangerous. It truly is, right? I mean,
yeah, and that's a big concern. It's good on camera, right? It's entertaining. You guys saw it. You guys liked it, right? But in real life, you'll hear me and Sean have a small conversation. We can't show everything. It won't be entertaining if it's a 10-hour episode, right? But we do show for a second that me and Sean are talking about the dangers. That hole was about 110-foot drop from when he first descended down into it. If something would happen to him, that's real life, guys. That's real life. And he was willing to risk that and try it for the chance of us unlocking. We were told by the Native Americans, Native Indians in this area, that when they drove out the Spanish, and that's what that situation was about, when they drove off the Spanish after they were mining, they came back after the conquistadors fled, and they threw all the tools, everything that was left behind by the Spanish down in a natural blowhole. And that's what that was. That was a natural blowhole. So there were a few in that area. Sean took that risk to try this blowhole to go down and see if there was any evidence of artifacts or anything that might have been thrown down in there.
Right. Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, and there's another one too. So since we're on the subject of Sean, I'll go ahead and show. This was another one that you guys found. And you just see this and you think that doesn't look too bad. It looks like maybe a small cave or something like that. There's the comic relief right there sitting in the UTV.
What a handsome devil.
Yeah, you did a great job. I mean, you got your gold pan there behind you, and you did a little panning for gold while you were waiting for these guys to come. You didn't know if they were ever going to come back, but you had the wheels, right? So
I had the wheels, I had the food and water. I was
there you go. You're set.
I think you had the keys too, didn't you, Todd?
Yeah, see.
Yeah, they were there.
here's some pictures of where Sean went down into this other cave, that one that I just showed. And this is Sean crawling around down in here. And this is where, and you say in your opening video, Timothy, you were talking about the fact that if you're going to be very careful if you're going to follow our breadcrumbs, because this truly is dangerous stuff. And I'm going to flip through these pictures a little bit and show you folks where Sean was going on his own. They were yelling to him down in this hole, and he couldn't hear. I don't know if he could hear them. They could hear a muffle coming back out of the hole. He went down in here, and there's cave-ins down there. There's logs that are holding this thing up that are falling apart. I mean, look at these pictures where he went.
Wow.
I mean, that could collapse on him any minute, and he's down there disturbing this as little as he can. I mean, he's trying to be very careful. But I mean, if something happened to him down there, who's going in after him?
Yeah.
Timothy, you going in?
Well, and here's another thing about Sean. You look at my body type. I'm this bigger, guy. I guarantee you I wouldn't be able to go after with Sean. He's slim. He has a great fit for going into there. When I've gone in with Sean, there's been times where the hole is barely bigger than his waist. And he goes in and he's like, come on, Tim, come on. I got my flashlight. And I go like halfway in. It's like those cartoons that you've seen, like the Looney Tunes, where you're going, nope. Sorry, Sean, you're on your own. So, yeah, no, I don't think unfortunately, if something did happen to him, we would have had to call Lifeline. We would have had to get search and rescue out there. It would have been extremely expensive. And who's to say that if part of that old mine didn't collapse on him, that they could even get to him in a right amount of time? I guarantee you, even a helicopter to tell him exactly where we were, because we were so deep in the wilderness. When you see our UTVs and our four-wheel drives on our episodes, just assume that we went down the highway as far as you could. Then we went down a dirt road as far as the trucks would take us. And then we get the UTVs and go as far as we can from there. And then we're on foot to go even further. So it's dangerous. If something did happen, it would not be good. So safety is number one.
Timothy, what's the most dangerous expedition you've ever been on?
Oh, gosh.
I mean, is there one that just stands out for you? Or the team?
There was, that's a good question, but it's a hard one to answer.
White Peak was got a little sketchy at times. Just not anything big, just a lot of little things.
White Peak,
we went up in the Uintas up at White Peak.
Okay.
And we didn't have anything big happen, but just a lot of little things, car problems, and I had a hard time getting back up the hill. And Tim had some health issues, and a lot of little things just kept happening on that trip.
Yeah. Wow. And that's another thing that everybody needs to remember. We're not out there with the whole camera crew, and we're not showing what's behind us, which is, a national park or a city park. Like I said, we're way out there in the middle of nowhere. So to be honest with you, Mother Nature is probably our worst enemy. And so is our bodies. One of the scariest moments were a moment where I thought I was going to die. I had heat exhaustion. I was dehydrated. I hiked, almost 10 miles off trail, not on trail, off trail, going through the brush and, using my machete. I was out to find or make a discovery, and I thought I was going to die. I was laying on the ground. I'm doing the crawl on my belly. I saw a stream in front of me. I get my face in the stream and I'm drinking it. And I remember I'm sitting there just going, I'm going to stay here because at least people will find me here. Everybody knows I'm in this remote area. And then all of a sudden I looked at my GPS and I go, my Jeep's only 3/4 of a mile away. And that ice cooler is full of Gatorade, soda, water. And I got up and I went. But I thought I was going to die.
Wow. That's crazy. It truly is. And now you've assembled this great team. And so I like how you do this. You're looking at this as a multi-pronged exploration. Like I said, you've got yourself that has the knowledge about what's going on out there and the Spanish and the mines and the history behind everything through your research. But then you've got, like you said, Sean, that's going to be the climber and go down into these caves and whatnot. You've got Mark doing your metal detecting. I mean, and Chooch doing the camera work. You've put this team together of these people, which is absolutely in my opinion, the right way to do it. So, that when you go into these things, you brought on the other two guys that I was, was it KC and KG and Ringy
Yeah.
again. More of the comedy relief guys coming into this, but how long they've been metal detecting? A long time, haven't they?
Oh, a long time. Mark knows them better than I do. Mark, you want to explain a little bit about those guys?
Sure. So let me mention something right away. Garrett Metal Detectors is one of our sponsors, right? Mm-hmm. And they supplied all of our metal detecting equipment, all of our gear. For that standpoint, KG and Ringy are affiliated with Garrett as well as Gypsy Jules is.
Yep.
So it was a natural fit for them to be a part of what we were doing. Garrett wanted to send them out there and let them be a part of it as well. And so I've metal detected with all of them before. And I can tell you, they are really good at what they do. Now, KG and Ringy were on the National Geographic show for 3 years called The Diggers. So if you go back and look at Nat Geo, they are really good personalities. Everything you see on camera is the way they are in real life. They like to cut up, they like to play around, but they are very serious detectors and they're detectorists, and they're really good at what they do. So when we assembled this team and Garrett Metal Detectors became our sponsor, and I suggested to Tim, we got to get these guys out here because they're really good. They work with Garrett, and it's a natural fit. And then the same thing happened with Gypsy. She's really good at what she does from exploring and metal detecting. So we thought it'd be great to have her as well. So that's how that all came about.
Yep. So tell us a little bit about the metal detecting side of it. I mean, when you guys go out, and we saw, and I got a couple pictures, obviously you can't show us every little thing you find and dig up out of the ground, but I mean, this is all part of it. And this, the hunting for, and this is where John with his, John Edwards with his background and his research, he's a researcher, extraordinaire into this kind of stuff as well. Looking into the whole Spanish coming up, there years ago, I really didn't have a whole lot of knowledge about the Spanish coming up out of South America into North America. Now, and you talked about earlier in the pre-show, we were talking about the missions that they were coming up. So take us down that road a little bit about, if you don't mind, Timothy, and or whoever wants to take the lead on this, about how you got involved with the Spanish side of this. I mean, is that where this all started? Or, I mean, did you do some other stuff first and then kind of get on to the Spanish coming up and looking for the mines? Or how did this all become part of that, your research?
Oh man, research. It's like location, with treasure hunting. Research is 90% of what I have done from the very beginning. Like I mentioned, I had mentors that did this their whole life, and they told me, and they told me that fact, research a lot. I used to go out there with just my backpack, and I would pick a mountain range and go, I'm going to go hike that all weekend. And it was a lot of fun, and it was a great adventure. But you know what? I wasn't making the discoveries that I wanted by doing that. So I learned that especially before you take out a big team like this, you got to do your homework. You got to make sure that that there's some kind of lost history in that area. So I've been doing this for a long time. Ghost town hunting was one of my first things I started doing. Right when I got my driver's license, I've always been an outdoors man. So it was just natural. Hey, buy a 4-wheel drive, go up in the mountains. And I started finding mines, and I started finding old mining camps and a lot of relics and a lot of really cool cabins and stuff from the 1800s. Living out here in the West, there's a lot of that stuff out there. And then as I got closer and closer to my mentors and they started really educating me on a lot of this stuff, I was overwhelmed. And I talk about that in my new book. There's a whole chapter about me being overwhelmed. Don't take on too much information at once, because there is so much lost history and mysteries to North America that it's just overwhelming. So anyways, I kind of lean more towards the Spanish side, because I started learning it doesn't matter where the Spanish were. When you come down to the simple fact that they're conquerors, they were here for a purpose. Spices, gold, silver, things like that, things that were very important to them. Once you realize why they were here, and if you use the proper technique to follow their tracks of where they went, you'd be surprised how many ancient cultures and Native Americans and stuff like that came in their path as they were conquering and as they were plundering. So people know me as the Spanish guy, the guy who hunts after all the Spanish history, but that has taught me to learn and be well-rounded in all American history, because I don't just I don't just focus on the Spanish. I focus on why they're in that area, which culture pointed them to that area, what were they looking for, what time period, all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly it. You would have to have context, and you have to have motivation. Yeah. So when you start immersing yourself into everything that they would have seen, motivation and context, you kind of see the whole adventure through their eyes, which is exactly what you want, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And this research is real. These videos that we're putting out are real. It's kind of hard, to be honest with you. The hardest part, well, there's two hard parts. Look at my guys and go watch our videos, and you'll see that these guys are putting themselves out on a limb. They got a camera 4 feet away from their face saying, "Hey, Todd, explain how you feel. How do you feel right now, Sean or Todd?" Or so you got that. That's a little nerve-wracking, to be honest with you. It took me several years of working with the networks and with production companies to kind of get over that, the nervousness of being in front of the camera. But we're out there trying to look for real treasures. So Chooch, we're not lining up Chooch for every scene going, "Hey, Chooch, let's make this entertaining. Let's make it seem like it's something." No, Chooch is running around chasing us real treasure hunters around and trying to still make it, he's trying to keep up. And when you get us out there, we split up like this, and that makes it really hard.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, now that we're on that subject, Chooch, I mean, I saw in the very first video you have for Treasures in America, Timothy, you talk about assembling the team together, and that's really cool because it gives us an idea of who everybody is. Chooch, tell us a little bit about how they approached you with this and asked you, do you want to lug a camera around out there in the wilderness and find stuff and all that? How did that come about?
Well, they knew I loved the outdoors, and I was already friends with Tim and a few of them, and they're like, "Hey, you're good with a camera. You want to come make us look good?" So I didn't quite know what I was getting into. That's actually a lot more work than I was expecting, but it's been a blast, and it's hard to ring them in sometimes and keep them lined out. But I'm like, hey, if you got it, if you're gonna go find something, it better be on camera. Otherwise, better go bury it again. But, they're good. They've been a good team to work with for sure.
Yeah. So the pay is really good then to keep you going out there.
Well,
we all wish the pay was really good. I'm telling you that. And that's
I'll tell you what, you do a good job with it.
Yeah, and that's a simple fact that everybody needs to realize. What we're doing, it's not cheap, and everybody's kind of putting themselves out there, hoping that it becomes something. But it's everybody's hard-earned money, the sponsors' hard-earned money, and we're doing it because it's our passion. We're going to see where it takes us.
Yep. So what are some examples of when you said you research? Are they maps, old maps? Are they parchments? Are they logs? Or where do you pull all your source material from before you go into an expedition for treasure?
Well, luckily, and Todd help me out with this one. Luckily, I'm not the only treasure hunter out there. There's been generations after generations after generations who have been searching for treasures all around the world. So I had some of my mentors, me and Todd were pretty lucky. We both grew up kind of the same way. You know, as soon as we hit our 20s, we're out there in the field. We're reading books that treasure hunters wrote before us, and that kind of leaves breadcrumbs, like what we mentioned on our show. You know, leaving the breadcrumbs, and then from there, a lot of our research. Here's one thing that's very resourceful for us being in the Western states. Mexico City was the headquarters for the Spanish in at least the Western states. You know, the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayans, sorry, they were all conquered by the Spanish. And so when the Spanish took over the Aztecs, they literally tore down the Aztecs ruins and built their chapel, their headquarter buildings right on top of those ruins. And from there, a lot of them went north or south. You know, you got Cortez that even after he took over with the Aztecs, he ventured up north. You got Francisco who did the same thing. There is conquistador after conquistador, hundreds of years of them, you know, searching North, Central, and South America. And so they left. What people need to understand is the King of Spain, it doesn't matter if it was in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, the King of Spain demanded records be kept. And so even the captains who are out in the field, let's say if they were in Utah, I'm out of Utah, so I know a lot about the Spanish history here. If they were in Utah, it was required for them that if they found, let's say, a hidden city, or if they found an ancient mine that still wasn't played out and there was gold and silver and they planned on remining it, opening it back up and mining it, they had to tell Mexico City with a letter. They would send a writer back to Mexico City saying, we're around these coordinates. Here's a map. Here's a waybill that explains what we found, how long we've been here, what we're hoping to get, and yada, yada, yada. These documents and maps were going back and forth. They ended up in Mexico City, and then they were redrawn. Most times the original went to Spain, but in Mexico City, they redrew or rewrote those records and kept them there for themselves too. So we're talking about a very organized culture, you know, the conquistadors keeping records of locations where something is. And that went on for a very long time.
And you're able to, we can still, I guess you're able to access some of these and find some of these records. Is that
it's not easy or cheap? I can tell you that. Well, I know before my mentor died, he had a guy down in Mexico City for about 6 months, a guy that he knew, and he was down there with American money, dollar bills. And he spent, I'll give you a little bit of a trade secret. He spent a lot of time visiting old missions, old churches that are no longer Spanish churches. They're museums, or maybe they're a schoolhouse. You'd be surprised in Mexico that these old Spanish buildings, what they're being used for today. And down in the basement, some of these places still have documents, and let me rephrase that. I was about to say they don't care. That's not true. American money can bribe some people to purchase these documents and bring them back to people like us to document and to research.
So it's source material that's never been seen before in many cases.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's fascinating.
It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, really.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of people have been doing this before me. It's very important. If you want to be a treasure hunter, you first got to learn the treasure hunter's trust, respect, and you got to show your devotion before anybody's going to share a lot of information to really help you out on your own. And people like me and Todd have spent our life. For instance, my mentor who passed away last year, I think for almost 6 years, I emailed them. 6 years. And this is back when the web was new, when emails were new. And every once in a while, I'd get kind of like a fan response. Hey, Tim, thanks. I'm glad you like my book, or, and that's it. It took years and years to get him to even meet with me. And then when he did, I'm not going to lie, he sent me in the wrong direction on purpose to test my devotion and to see what I was going to do. So he told me there was something that way, right? Go that way. And he pointed to a map, and I spent a year in that area. And every month I would send him information. Hey, I found this, but this doesn't really match what you're saying. And after a year, he kind of cracked up and goes, Tim, you passed the test. You never told anybody on social media. I didn't see you say one thing about it. You stayed in connection with me the whole time, passed on your discoveries. Guess what? Go 12 miles exactly that way. And he pointed to another place in the map, and all of a sudden I started finding things.
Wow.
So,
that's amazing.
Wow, it truly is. Yeah, that's the thing about it. And that's one of the things that I admire of you guys, documenting everything and doing your best to preserve history. And that's to me, there's a, John mentioned it earlier, the difference, and I don't know if this is where this comes in, but the difference between a treasure hunter and an investigator, because you're doing your best to not only find these things, but to preserve what you're finding, document what you're finding, and share it with the world. And I have to admire you for that, and I commend you for that work. But tell us a little bit about that, John. I know that was your question, John. I'm sorry I stole it from you, but
No,
tell
you're
us a
good.
little bit about your philosophy between a treasure hunter and an investigator.
We came up with the name Investigator when we started the idea for Uncharted Expedition. And the reason why is because a lot of us have worked together, and you'll hear this legend saying, hey, you'll even get on social media and start doing research, and you'll notice that some treasure hunters will say, hey, this area has this. We went out there as a team, and between all of our resources and knowledge, we looked at some of these sites, scratching our head going, that thing's not over 50 years old. There's no way that's ancient. That's 1,000 years old. So we have naturally got into investigation. You can't just go off of everything you read. And by doing that, we had to learn how to tell a difference between, some inscriptions that are carved in rock. Are they new? Are they old? And one way is the lichen growth. And another thing with the structures, people can build a structure, or they can find a structure and someone can say, hey, that's old, that's Native American. And there's only a select few that can go out there and look at that structure and go, yeah, no, I bet you it hasn't even been here for 100 years. That's from someone in the 1800s, So that's a difference between, we're still treasure hunting, but we're out there investigating to make sure we're not wasting our time and that we're focusing on real historical events.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good explanation. Thank you.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to weigh in here a little bit, about the term treasure hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of different meanings. People think of it as going out and finding gold and silver. And I think you mentioned it on the first video about how long they've been on the Curse of Oak Island looking for treasure, right? So a big part of it for us is the experience, the adventure, the camaraderie, the things we do together as a team. That's all part of the treasure. You may or may not ever find what you're looking for, but the adventure of looking for it and that experience is all part of that. It is all part of the treasure itself.
Yeah, well said. You're exactly right. That is for sure. That's one of the things.
And we look at.
Go ahead. Oh, please go ahead, Todd.
We kind of look at it as we're in the middle of the treasure hunting thing. You've got the first part where you get a story, you find a story, however you find it, and that's develop treasure leads. But you've got a story, you research it, and then the middle part is you go out and you investigate and you look around, and then you've got the end part, which hopefully is finding the treasure. And we want to be in the middle. I would like to be at the end, but we're kind of starting out in the middle where we've got a story, we've researched it, and now the fun part where we get to go out. Sometimes, the research gets long and boring if you're not into that, and that. So we wanted to do that middle part and hopefully get to the end part at some time.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things, I was looking at, there, and I have a picture of it here, a couple of pictures. Actually, I'm going to get to the last one here that I passed it. This one here, I'm going to show real quick. Now this kind of showed you guys laid out on the table, and we saw during your two episodes, episode number 2 and episode number 3, when you're out looking, we saw some of the finds that everybody that Mark and KG and I
Did
forgot
you
his
ring
name.
it? Yep.
Ringy, yes. I was going to say Rainy. It's Ringy. Had found, but all of these pieces, I'm one of these people that when I'm metal detecting, I get a hit, I'm going to dig it up. I mean, I don't care. I'm going to see what it is. And I dig up, if I'm in somebody's yard and I dig up a couple matchbox cars, hey, it's still a find, right? So, I mean, I'm going to dig them up. But each one of these pieces that are on this table right here that you guys have, to me is now some of it's new, some of it's old. Um, but each one of these is a find, and each one of them has a little bit of a story to tell. So in my mind, yeah, you didn't come out with a bunch of gold and silver coins or find it, whatever, but this is all treasure. Every bit of it to me is. That's the way I look at it. And each one of them has a story behind it. Even the horseshoe nail and the square nail and the old cartridges. I mean, each one of these things tell a story of some sort. And to me, it's all treasure. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
And it's all part of the puzzle. Each one shows us another little piece of the overall puzzle.
Yep. Exactly.
People ask me, and again, I mean, everybody needs to realize I'm in Florida, so I fly out to southern Utah to be a part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
But people ask me, can you really find treasure? And what I will tell you is, a couple of years ago, and this is kind of a side story.
Mm-hmm.
I had a gentleman that I knew came to me and said, "Listen, I found some treasure on a Florida beach with a metal detector, and I haven't ever told anybody. And I was wondering if you would share the story or tell the story." And when I had the opportunity to see what he found, I was blown away.
Really?
And I ended up doing all the research on the 1715 fleet.
Yeah.
12 galleons came up in 1715 and sank. 11 of them sank on July 31st, 1715, right?
Yep.
And in 2018, we had 2 northeast storms go through Florida, and he happened to be on the beach at the right place at the right time. Recovered 13 gold escudos, 30-something silver reals, number of artifacts. And he did that within a 2-week period of time, and then the sand came back over, and so all of that treasure there was there for 300 years.
Wow.
But it was covered by 15 feet of sand.
Yep.
My point being is when you look at that treasure, it's worth about $500,000. So if somebody says to me, "Is treasure, can you find treasure?" The answer is yes. And what was interesting when I wrote the story and did all the research and sent it to American Digger magazine, after people started reading the story, I had people approaching me, telling me stories about some of their treasure that they've never shared before.
Wow.
And the conclusion that I came to was probably 1 in 10 treasures that are found are ever talked about. I think most of the treasure out there is you'll never know about.
Right.
And so we're going out and looking, and we may or may not find it ourselves at any given time, but we know it's there.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the, and I'm getting more and more familiar about the 1715 fleet. We've had, obviously, there was some Beyond Oak Island episodes that talked about it. And Rob Westrick has been on the show. He's become a friend of mine, and he's down, he was down here in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and I missed the opportunity because of things that were going on in my life. I couldn't go down and meet him. But he's been working the 1715 fleet. And then we've got another gentleman out here, Captain Joe Ziga and Mike Cuso. They're working on some stuff that they have, on the Beyond Oak Island episode, another one. And it goes on. And Melvin Fisher with the whole, with the Atocha and the find of the Atocha that they grandfathered in. That's their claim. And I was able to meet Melvin Apt, who is now running the show for that, and go down and meet with him and see that. I mean, so again, you talk about this treasure. that was underneath all this sand, and then a hurricane or something like that will come in and it'll clear it off. That's when you want to get out there, and there's probably 1,000 people out on the beach walking up and down at that time. But I was thinking, Mark, I'm gonna have to, now that I'm down here in Florida and I've got my trusty Garrett here. I'd love to meet up with you sometime and have you show me around. I mean,
Let's do it.
I would look forward to that. But again, treasure can be gold and silver coins, but treasure can also be those artifacts. And those are the things right there that, we just saw on Beyond Oak Island the other night, when they were out and they were looking and they pulled up some pieces from a shipwreck up in off of the coast of Nova Scotia, looking Peter Easton and talking about Bill Smith. And Bill Smith's going to be on the show tomorrow night. I've got another show tomorrow night with him. And they were finding pieces of pottery in jugs that that were on these ships that are broken. But again, it's all treasure. It's history. Yeah. It tells a story. And I don't care if it's not diamonds or it's not emeralds or it's not gold and silver. It's still a treasure find, in my opinion. And it tells that story. You're finding something that's been underwater for maybe 400 some years. Nobody's touched it. And now you're able to say, yes, this is that particular ship that was down. And this is what we found it. And we found these cannons or whatever. It's all part of that history. And that's what you guys are doing out west. Timothy, you're finding these things where the Spanish came up. And it's just, so many of us, we'd love to do what you're doing.
And that's the cool connection. I'm in Florida, the east coast of Florida, where the galleons came up.
Yep.
Him and the other parts of the team, they're in southern Utah, where they came up through Mexico up into that area. And it's all the Spanish exploration. And so what I'm doing over here in Florida and what they're doing over there and what we're doing over in there is all connected back to the Spanish explorers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that I wanted to say, we're talking about treasures. I'm the first one that will tell everybody not all treasures are shiny. Not all treasures you can go down to the pawn shop and say, hey, can I pawn this off and get some money? The treasures sometimes in all my years of researching has been the lost historical documents that I end up coming up upon. Sometimes they're sitting in South America in a library. It's really hard to say where these things are, but that alone is like a treasure hunt. And then going out in the field and discovering that, hey, we think we narrow it down to a certain site, and you go out there and you start finding evidence. That's why we call ourselves investigators. You start finding evidence of it. That's a treasure right there. Your hard work and let's say kind of like a map took you to the X, and now you can start unraveling that lost history. That's a treasure. Going out with our buddies, we're all buddies here doing that. That's a treasure. So
absolutely,
a lot of people in a lot of ways, I wish everybody can experience what we experience. It's something that we're passionate about. It's something that at least I can say I'll do until the day I'm dead. And I get to do it with my buddies, and I get to meet new people all the time. That's a treasure.
Yep, absolutely. Todd, I've seen in the show when they first come across you in the very first episode. Well, of course, you've known them for a while, but they come and find you out there, and you're panning for gold. Tell us a little bit about your years of panning for gold. Have you found much? Do you have a special spot that you like to go to?
I've got 2 claims right now. I've had 4 or 5 before that we've sold off, but we still got 2. We've had these for about 10 years. They're pretty good claims. You can do pretty good on them. I got interested in treasure hunting for treasure hunting, but when I would go out, it would be a lot of times, you're looking for an old lost mine or something. Well, that's a mining area, so I kind of learned about mining and got into gold mining, and I was swinging a detector out there, and so one day I was home and bored and went up to the park and started metal detecting and got into metal detecting houses and parks that way. But so the gold mining I've been doing for a long time, but it was always part of the whole, part of getting out and doing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So have you had a lot of success or much success with it?
You know, the claim that we've got now, I get out to a couple times a year, and it's okay. You can do a little bit. I've had other claims that have been better, where we've done really well, but we're 500 more miles away than what the ones we've got now. So it's probably 1,000 or so, and just we're not feasible to keep. One year I did really good down in Arizona. Got enough. I bought a motorcycle and a Jeep.
Wow.
So that was a good year.
Yeah. That's one thing I've never done. I've never panned for gold before. And I watch people do it, and there's a technique, and you're looking for the black sand and all that kind of stuff. And I would love to, if I get to come out west, or well, I will be out west this summer. I'd love to meet you and have you show me the ropes a little bit. If we could ever work that out, that'd be great. I'd love to learn from you.
Sure. That'd be great. Yeah.
I see what you're doing, and it's just, and like I said, I don't have that technique of, but I'd love to try it and just see what it's all about. It's so fascinating.
Hey, Jeff, I just figured out what you're doing. You get all these people on the show so you can go out and hang out with all of them and get to do all
that. I tell you what, that has been, and I've talked about this before, but that has been a blessing of my show, is that I've had such interesting people come on. And then I get to meet them, hopefully, not all of them, but some of them I've got to meet in person. And that has been a true blessing for me. It really, truly has. And I never expected that the show would go that way, but it has. And I wouldn't give it up for the world, because I've met such wonderful people, and they have shown me things and taught me things. And that's the thing about it. Tonight, here we are talking with you guys. And I wish that, you try to figure out how to get the YouTube algorithms to work to where it really gets out there. Not so much that I can get all the 10,000 views or whatever. That's that's great. And I'd be lying if I didn't look forward to that kind of thing. But it's to be able to share this knowledge that you guys bring to us.
Yeah.
Here on the show, to share it with everybody. That's the part that I really want to do. And how do you get that out there? Because every time I have guests on, like yourselves, all of you, that you're teaching us something. You're teaching me something, and I want to share that with everybody. And I can't. It's such a blessing. But yeah, to meet you guys in person, you bet. I would love to.
Well, Jeff, it sounds like you found your treasure.
I have. I truly have.
Yeah.
This has been definitely been a treasure. And I got to meet John, and John's got some research and things going on in his life that are fantastic. And he's searching out his treasure right now. And I wish him the best with all of that. So it's just one of those things where, I've met, and the connections that I've made has just really been awesome. It truly has. There was a question in here that Linda had. She was making, and I don't know if Linda Linda Simpson has put this up or not, but it was the question that I saw Jan asked a moment ago. She was referring to the fact about the researchers and not wanting to share it too much. And I think it was saying maybe, oops, sorry, you went to click it and I did too. Maybe they're afraid of the treasures being taken away. You're not, are you allowed to keep what you find? That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm going to address it from Florida, and then Tim can address it from out there. But
okay,
yeah, a lot of them don't share the story because they don't know what might happen if they share the story. Whether it's government or somebody else suing them, saying, "Hey, you're on our property," or whatever the case may be. And it may be totally legitimate, but they're just being careful by not sharing that information.
Yep.
Now in Florida, and you're in Florida now, but the whole case with Mel Fisher went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
State of Florida tried to take everything that he found. And basically, when it was all said and done, the Supreme Court awarded everything 100% in the water to Mel Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what a lot of people don't know is he actually went back to the state of Florida and said, let's do this. I'll give you 20% of everything I find. And so the history of that in the precedents is basically everything in the water that's recovered. And by the way, you can't just go out in the water and look for it. They have leases on them on those areas that they own, and then they go out every year. Same thing with the 1715 fleet. The Queen's Jewels LLC has the rights to that area. But when they go out and find it, then the state, they tag everything, artifacts, treasure, everything. And the state gets 20% of that. And then the treasure hunters, they divide up the rest. Some of it goes to the divers, some of it goes to but that's how it's divided up. And then on land, on the beach itself, the general precedent is 100% finders keepers. So Jimmy Crossbones, who I wrote the article about, he was able to keep everything because it was all found on the beach with a metal detector.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's generally the rule in Florida. And somebody else wrote in the chat, it's different with every state, and it is different in every state. And I'll give you one more example, and then I'm going to let them talk. But like, for example, in Florida, you can go and look for shark's teeth all day long in the water, off the beach, in the water, as long as it's not in a state park, and you can keep them. But if you want to pick up a fossil, you have to get a $5 license from the University of Florida. You apply for it every year. It's $5. You send in your paperwork, and you get your license. And then you have to record every fossil find at the end of the year and send it back into them. Now, the other side of that is if you're in the water or anywhere on land that's public land, you cannot touch any Native American artifacts. It's a felony. Unless you're on private property and you have permission on that private property. So if you're in the water and you find a shark's teeth, pick it up and keep it. As long as you have a fossil license, you can keep all your fossils. If you find a arrowhead or something like that, just leave it where it is.
Interesting.
So you got to know the laws. You got to know the laws everywhere you're at.
There's a good question from Tom. Tom's a co-host. He co-hosts with me on Curse of Oak Island and stuff. Any trick to convincing landowners to allow access?
Well, I think, and I know Todd's been doing it longer than I have, but, everybody's different. I think what you have to do, number one, you have to be genuine. You have to really, share with the landowner who you are, what you're doing, and be honest.
Yep.
And I think the other part of that is, I think some landowners would like to know what's on their land. And if you're willing to share part of that with them, in other words, say, hey, look, what I do, and I'll just share what I do, is when I talk to a landowner, I basically say, look, anything that's a relic or something that's pertinent to your family or this property or this home that we can identify, like, maybe a piece of jewelry that's got some initials on it that was one of your grandfathers or we'll give you everything that belongs to your family.
Right.
And just let us look at it and have everything else, coins, buttons, whatever the case may be. Landowners want to know what's on their land a lot of times. So I think just being genuine, in telling your story about how you, what you do and how you do it, in that you're not going to destroy their property in the process, is really the way to do it. And maybe Todd's got some other ideas.
No, just I always try and be upfront with them and as professional as possible. They don't want to see some grubby person. They want to know that you're not going to tear things apart, and just be as upfront and honest as you can.
Yep.
There's a couple things that I can give you some tips on. For one thing, it's not just state to state laws. It's county laws too. You have to check your state laws. You got to check your county laws. And at least here where I'm at, it should be every state. There's counties all over every state. So you can cross the border of one county will allow a certain thing and another one won't. Another thing when it comes down to the homeowners or to the property owners, to be honest with you, I've had to work with them in the past, and I still have yet to find one that won't allow us to work on their property if we share the story with them. Lots of times I go knock on the door and I already have all my information. I know what I've tracked down. I share all that stuff with them and bring them a part of that story, make them feel excited. Another thing is that they're worried that if they let one person do it, Tomorrow there might be 50 people on there. So I also let them know that we're not going to share the location. We're treasure hunters. We're not telling everybody where we are. That stuff is safe. And another thing, believe it or not, there's contracts. There are literally contracts you could sign that between you and the homeowner that kind of helps both of you. He gets 50%, you get 50% or whatever. So there's a lot of different concerns. And so it's always like what these guys said, be honest with them and also learn to be a good salesman. Don't just knock on the door and say, hey, I like your grass and it's an old home and it might have some old coins in it. Let them know what you do and bring them into your world a little bit. Share that a little bit with them and you'll be surprised how their eyes get big and they start getting excited. Oh, you think there might be something here? You know what? I always like a good treasure hunt. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what you don't say. You don't say, hey, hold on, let me go get my backhoe and I'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you talk about that plug.
If you go up to the door with a shovel in your hand.
Yeah. Well, I do have my shovel, but you put that plug back. So you leave it the way you found it. You definitely
I actually have a funny story about that where, the funny thing is like if a kid goes out and we have some kids here in Florida that are really good. They look at Seminole War sites and they've found out that some of the sites are in home developments and they go up and knock on the door. Well, who's going to turn a kid away that's doing something like that? So they were joking about it and they said, hey, the kid walked up to the house and he said, hey, can I hunt on your land or your property? And they said, sure. And he said, well, can my grandpa come with me? And he said, sure. Well, I guess, your grandpa can come too. So he goes back to the car and 5 guys get out. And the guy said, how many grandpas do you have?
That was pretty good thinking on their part.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, for sure. So find some kids that like to metal hunt, detectorists, and have them go knock on the door for me. That's a good ploy. I think I'll try that. Robot had a good question here. It said, in Utah Aztec tunnels, have you seen torch marks for lighting? Do you believe they use another source? Blind Frog Ranch found gallium. It is now patented to replace lithium batteries. So what have you found in any of these caves or tunnels or mines that you found out there? Is there any kind of remnant left behind from torches or anything like that you've seen?
I would say that if they're older, the ones that I've seen that I've been able to say, hey, these are quite old. This cave or mine is at least a couple of 100 years old or older. I would say the torch is very common. When you get into the more 1800s, you saw more of the candles and stuff like that. But I've also heard of an old technique that they use more in Central America and South America, oils and stuff. I don't think we should just think that it's only just narrow it down to just torches or just candles. There's a lot of forgotten knowledge and techniques that we don't use in today's world, and it's not really written anywhere. So I would say leave your mind very much open, but I would say torches was one of the things that definitely poke out in my mind the most.
Yeah.
Interesting. I got one, Jeff. Vatican influence. Age of exploration and forward. How much Vatican influence was in this in searching for treasure? And were there any missionaries involved in the search for, maybe Aztec gold? And how does the Vatican and Vatican influence play into your research?
You want to answer that, Todd?
Yeah, the groups that came out here, the individual explorers, all had to have a writ from the king out here. Part of that was they had to have a group of priests come with them to see to their religious needs and to baptize or bring in any of the Indians that might want to or be forced to. Anyway, so you had really kind of almost 2 competing groups with every expedition that came out. You had the Jesuits, which was most of the priests that came with them were Jesuits. So you had the Jesuits, and then you had the miners or the explorers that were working from themselves, but had to be good with the king at the same time. So, you know, you when you're looking at some of these looking for the journals or the maps or whatever, you could be looking for two different sets. You know, there may be a set that was the captain of the exploration, and there would be another set that was the Jesuits, because they wanted their cut too.
Wow, I didn't know.
To add to that, Todd, keep in mind there could be three sets. Todd did brush on it. So you had the conquistadors that were here for the king. You had the Jesuits, and you also had conquistadors that were here for the king that found something off on the side for themselves. We are finding evidence that is happening. So there might be a king's mine, let's say, in a certain area, and they were just like what I mentioned before. Waybills went out, maps went out. You know, there was communication back and forth, what they're bringing back to Spain. But some of those conquistadors, we have evidence that may point that as they were working in this area, a few of them went, hey, you know, there's something over here. Let's maybe not mention this one. Let's don't write and tell them about it. We'll keep it for ourselves. So that is up in the air too.
Well, let's back up. So there are three sets, right, of persons or, you know, people of influence that have interest in these treasures. Did they all three communicate with each other, or did the third set of people want to keep this kind of the king's mind, or whether off the books? And are you finding that?
They all work together, but there was a lot of, hey, let's not tell Juan over there what we found, because it was just like the king. The Pope would want his share too.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of politics, a lot of things going on, and the long-term Spanish mining camps that we know of, almost all of them have either a church or a little cathedral or a little shrine built.
Altar.
They all had their priests with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I believe, I picture it this way from what I've seen. The king was smart, and you don't want to just send a few of your soldiers out to trust them that they're going to bring back the gold. The Catholic Church was very big on wanting their cut, and God needs, money for his churches and, things like that. So it was actually very well done. Some things that people may not know is that even if a small group of Spaniards went out, and let's say there was 10 of them, you're going to have a map maker. You're going to have someone who knows how to write. You're going to have a geologist. You're going to have a miner. You're going to have a couple guys with guns that are very good soldiers. So they were very put together and very smart. And if one tried to cut out the other one, you had to worry about mutiny and, people finding out about it and stuff like that. So it was quite organized from the way I see it from my research.
And the other thing, too, is what you'll find is some of the most beautiful artifacts that are recovered are religious artifacts.
Yes.
They have crosses. I mean, some of the recoveries from the Atocha and from the 1715 fleet, the beautiful crosses that are laden with gems. And you wouldn't typically find a sailor with a large gold chain, but you would find a priest who would have a large gold chain that he would wear, and that would not be taxed. Because he's wearing it as part of his religious garment or whatever. And so, there were different agendas and competing, things going on with who had what and who was carrying what. Some of it was going back to the church. Some of it was going back to the king.
Right. Yeah. And there's a good point about some of the ships, the 1715 fleet. Many of the manifest would have a log of everything that was taken. that was not the church's. They would have a log of everything in the manifest. And then the church had their gifts that they would have, you know, that weren't on the manifest. So you really don't know what the heck was in there,
right?
You know,
the
that's
manifest, the manifest back then was a great way to record what Spain was going to receive, not necessarily what was found
right
prior to that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I know with the Atocha, and again, these are the things that I've been learning by doing these shows and having you guys come on. And like the Atocha, they're looking for the Stern Castle now. They're trying to find the Stern Castle because that's where the priest and the captain would have kept his stuff and all those chests of the things that the priest had that is not on the manifest. And that's what they're trying to find now. So yeah, what a racket.
It's fascinating.
It really is. That's what I was going to say. Fascinating.
Exactly. You're right, Todd. It is probably the best stuff of all of that was found. Yeah.
Man. Well, and that's the thing. It's the hunt, everybody. Just so everybody knows what keeps me going after all these years, it's the hunt. It literally is. If treasure hunting was easy, I'd get bored with it. I really would. I can tell you that right now. My personality, if it was easy, if it's something that I can just go on the computer and do a keyword search, you know, Old Spanish mine for this or document for this mine, I would have given it up a long time ago. It does test you. It pushes you. And that hunt also is intriguing. What is around the next corner? You know, what are we going to find next? And that just really is intriguing, and it keeps most of us going.
Well, and I have a follow-up question. So treasures were kept off the books, right? At least in one of the three accounts. They might have mentioned it, but the other two accounts, maybe not. Were also places kept off the books? I'm thinking, like, I know there were Jesuit missionaries supposedly in the Superstition Mountains, for instance, and they explored that, and there's been maps where you can clearly see some Jesuit influence or symbols that might be Jesuit related. So were there also locations kept off the books that maybe one of the three parties involved would have known?
I would say yes, especially when it comes to the church. Especially when it came to the church, to be honest with you. And I can't say this for every group, every era, every Spaniard or someone from Spain who came here. But that story alone, I grew up in that area. I remember hearing about the Spanish and the Superstition Mountains, the Lost Dutchman mine, barely coming out of diapers, you know. And I remember that for locals, again, locals have a lot of information. Do not give up a resource like someone whose grandfather's father was involved or witnessed this. Those are very good stories to go off of. But anyways, I know in the Superstition Mountains alone, a lot of people who have spent more time than I have in that area of researching, it's seeming like the church, the priests, the Jesuits, whatever you want to call them, they had their own agenda in that area, at least I can say. And there weren't a lot. I think that one is more of a puzzle because of that. They kind of, I don't know if you want to say they went rogue. They were out doing their own thing. They found something big and they didn't want to share it. I don't know, but something did happen in that area for sure.
Wow. It's just amazing. And I'm assuming there were other areas just like the Superstition Mountains where things that the Vatican only knew, that were kept off the books.
Yeah. And that's what we specialize in, again.
That's why I'm asking the question, because I know that, have you run across anything that's been kept off the books?
That's pretty much what we go after, and it keeps people guessing, and it's exciting by doing that.
What were you going to say, Todd?
And it's kind of hard to know if it's off the books because we don't have all the books.
Right.
True.
Good point.
And we don't have a glossary or whatever that's connecting the two sets. There, maybe more, but so people kind of think, there's the records, but they're not all the same things and they're not put together. So I think a lot of what is kind of off the books is a lot of family things or a lot of a certain group see something and they'll make a note of it and tell their son, or they'll tell, their brother when they get back. And so I think there is a lot of things that are maybe not on the books that we have. It's probably out there somewhere.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and that ties back into what we're doing and where we're at. I mean, Tim and Todd can tell you a lot more about this, but in southern Utah, there's lots of silver mines, and the Spanish, enslaved the Paiute Indians there to mine there, and that wasn't, they didn't live very long when that happened.
I was going to say the life expectancy was very short.
Three months, 3 to 6 months is typical. If they got anywhere to close to a year, they were doing good, and they were probably more favored. And it wasn't just the men; it was the women too. You'd be surprised how many women were forced to work the smelters, which are burning at over 2,400 degrees all day long. In fact, women's urine, believe it or not, was one technique to separate some of the ore from the silver. And that's where Spanish arrastres come into play. I can go on and on and on about all this stuff, but there's so much fascinating information. I don't think I'll even get close to even grasping some of this stuff in my lifetime. And that's why writing books and doing these podcasts, trading things off to your kids. And, I see the need for anybody who likes treasure hunting, either if you're a beginner or an advanced treasure hunter. I think we all need to start working together. We all do feel like this is my treasure, and if I find it, I get the $1 million gold piece, right? But what happens? I've been asking everybody, I've been doing a lot of podcasts, and I want to ask everybody for a second, think about this. How many stories have you heard of the old man living up in the mountains his whole life? That hermit that lived up there, everybody called him crazy. He was looking for a treasure, and he ended up just never coming back to town. So do we want to look for one treasure in our life? Or should we all start grouping together? Use different. Mark has his own specialties and knowledge and things. Todd does. Jeff, John, you guys do too. I guarantee you, we all work together instead of finding that one big treasure we can hide from the federal government and live in a bunker for the rest of our lives. Or we can all work together, change the laws, and find many treasures together.
Yeah, I agree.
Jeff, you and I have discussed this before. It takes a village.
It absolutely takes a village. It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, John, that's one of John's favorite lines. It takes a village. Yeah, it really, truly does. To share that knowledge and don't be holding it close to your chest all the time. Yes, exactly right, Tom. It is a history hunting as well, and that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. There was a thing you mentioned in the show about Pine Valley Mountain and the 2 silver mines and 400 Spanish silver bars. You apparently this is research that you found that now you're hunting for this, and that is ongoing, I assume, correct?
Yeah. Even I will tell everybody, episode 4, we are on a new location. We're not on that location anymore. Just so everybody knows, our episodes are going to go. We want to show everybody who's willing to watch that it's not just one site. It's not just one culture's history. There's a lot out there. And so what we gathered, if you watch episode 2 and 3, the structures we found, what we found, the evidence to show us that the time area, all of them match back to around the 250 mark. No matter what we found, no matter what it was, a rock structure or symbols carved in a tree, everything we did kept pointing to that 250 years. That's exactly when we were told that the Spanish imprisoned the local Indian tribe here. And when they started working those mines, that's evidence. Is that a coincidence? I don't. One structure, one symbol, maybe one clue, maybe. But after you find multiple clues, and then when we found that old mine at the end, I can tell everybody right now, investigating the GoPro footage more that Sean did, it's interesting to me when he first goes in that tunnel, it almost seems someone more modern day, maybe 100 years ago, was in there trying to reopen that mine. It has obviously collapsed in many areas, and Sean proves that. I think someone found that back, and let's say in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they started using newer lumber. But as Sean goes deep, and when he really, if you got to watch that video, when he goes in there and it gets tight, and all of a sudden it goes, whoa, that's the moment where you really have to push pause and look at those timbers and look at the growth and just the moth and stuff that's growing off of those timbers. It's crazy. So I see not a couple generations. I see 2 eras of different timestamps in that mine. So we're not done with that. We want to find that true story. You never know when Uncharted Expedition may be back there with new equipment or with a new method to try to approach it in a different way to unlock that one.
Yeah, that's really cool too. And hopefully that you can. So speaking of episode number 4, and again, I encourage folks that are watching to go out and check these out. Treasures in America, you can find them on YouTube channel, and you can find them in the links. We got all the links down in the description below. But you were talking about episode number 4. When will that be coming out?
We are working on the finals right now, and it should be coming out at the end of this month. You'll want to watch for it at the end of this month, and we'll make announcements on YouTube and on our social media to let everybody know. But me and the editor have been working hard at that one. We did decide to take a little bit of a break. The word has gotten out a little bit, so I'll just kind of drop a little bit of a bomb. Todd said something about it earlier. I have had some health issues, unfortunately, and it happened around the time that we were done filming and it was time to start editing. So we took a little bit of a break to let me catch up a little bit, let the editor catch up, let the audience catch up. But what we have coming is going to be, I mean, I was sitting there the other day going through these files, and I'm telling you guys, these are our shows, right? We're producing them, we're creating them, and I can't tell you how much I enjoy watching the footage. I'm looking back, going, man, and I'm telling myself, wow, how is this going to? Okay, editor, she's my daughter, Jada Johnson, does the editing. My oldest daughter, I hand it off to her. Yeah, thank you. I'll let her know. I hand it off to her, and I say, Jada, Todd did this. Focus on that because that's really good. Or, hey, Sean did this. Or, oh my gosh, I forgot we found that. We got to show that. So I'm just excited about seeing the final footage, as I think all the other viewers and people who are watching it are.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And I've watched the first couple, a couple of times. I've gone through them just because I found it so interesting. And also I'm just going to flip through again some of the pictures that I had. And this was a nice little button that was found, which was cool. Did you ever figure out what any kind of age to this particular button?
What was it, Mark? What was KG saying on that one?
Yeah. So we figured out that it was mid 1700s code button.
That's awesome.
And which makes sense of where we were at in that smelter area. They joked about it if you watch the video, that you saw them joking about maybe a horse came and ran over the guy and knocked the button off. But it's about not mid 1700s, which works, which matches right into what when they were exploring that area.
Yeah, those guys are hilarious. But yeah, some more of the finds there. Square nails are always indicative of age. You can see that button right there again.
Wow.
And a couple buckles. But yeah, they were hilarious talking about this stuff. Here's some more things that were found. And then you've got the layout on the table. This rock right here, you were talking about the smelter and the rock. And I think, Todd, you were the one that was actually giving an explanation of this on the show about the heat that was involved. I mean, you look at this rock and you can just see
you look at that.
It's melted.
Yeah, it's just glass on there.
And I can tell you that I had someone look at this rock. I don't have the paperwork. It was not sent into an assayer, a professional assayer, but it was sent to a person who understands minerals, and they were able to look at it. And after careful inspection, they did find small sources of silver in it.
Wow.
So it's in the slag itself, not in the rock, but in the slag. So they were saying they were small particles that they agreed that if it was found by the smelter, that's the slag. That's all the trash, the leftover stuff that the Spanish were scraping off their pan. And that finding small particles of silver makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was really cool. This means that you're on the right track, is what this tells me. You found something, and I was going through my pictures here. Oh, there's a little, like a trail. They made a little wall there to help the trail.
Mm-hmm.
These things that you're finding out there, all of this is just so cool that it just shows us history, the things that you've discovered. And then, of course, I think that's Mark up there going with the metal detector up there on the hill. Yep. And then, of course, the cave, and then and then the comedy relief. That was hilarious. I mean, every time you cut back to Todd, they were sitting there, well, it's hailing now. And I was laughing so hard. I mean, it was so good. It was really, truly good. But you talked about the wood inside there and Sean going in and doing this. Oh my goodness. I mean, what a thing. And then you found some villages too. It looks like you guys went through some villages that you found. This was on a different show here. Different. And then of course, Gypsy. And there's Gypsy. And we can't wait to see Gypsy in episode 4. So that's really going to be great. And then somebody surprised her.
It's hard to keep everybody in line, and you know what? Everybody, I explain it this way. Like I said before, Chooch has a hard time because we're out there really finding something, and we just all kind of go like this, right? Well, we're all like kids. It's extremely fascinating to watch this group. We'll get serious and we're doing, but after being out there all day long, it's almost like you got all these guys together. They got to blow off steam somehow. So there's always going to be something funny that happens.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. So there's Sean. He's going to start rappelling down the hill, and he threw that rope down there, and he actually caught her off guard. She was doing a little spot interview there, and she scared her with the rope coming down. But yeah, I'm going to try to find that other picture I got real quick of the smelter. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Here.
I don't know if we've got a picture of it, but just out of the shot right there up on a ledge, Antonio found a little cool ledge, and he fell asleep and was sleeping up there while they were doing the interview.
Hey, Todd, so I was going through the uncut stuff the other day, and I found that, and I told Jada we need to show that because Antonio falls asleep. He's right there with us talking. 2 minutes later, all of a sudden he's quiet, and you're like, "What's going on with Antonio?" And he's fast asleep. And so we are going to show that as well.
Up in a tree.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But isn't that smelter fascinating? I mean,
it is.
Look at how thick that wall is. And that goes to show you. See, and this is very typical for Spanish mines. They end up using, the ground itself. When you look at the end that's closer to the dry creek, that's not surrounded by Mother Earth. But the rest of it is. And that's also another way to keep the heat in, to smelt down gold and silver and minerals to pretty much get rid of all the crappy stuff. You got to get that thing blazing hot, and it has to stay hot. So building them inside the ground up against a bank right next to a river, that's 100% typical for the kind of stuff that we're finding for Spanish mines.
Right. Yeah, this was great. And there's you, and you look at it in this picture, and you don't really get a sense of how big it is looking at it like this. But then when you look at this one where you're standing in there, it's like, my goodness, that thing's huge.
Yeah.
It really is. And you were finding the heat stress on these rocks and whatnot. You were talking about it during the episode there, talking about the intense heat again. And this is part of the treasure hunting, to find these things like this and document it and show that, yes, they were really here. This is evidence in your search, and this is all part of it. It's really, and I'm glad you were showing each portion of this as you went along, which is great filmmaking and good, it's good work. And that's why I encourage everybody to go watch these. Can't wait for episode 4 to come out. Truly, it's going to be, I look for all of your videos to come out now. It's you've got me hooked for sure.
We love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Right now, everything's been focused in southern Utah, which is great. I mean, there's plenty there, and you can go into northern Utah, you can go into Arizona, Mexico. I think, and we've got some great sponsors too that are helping us. This is, there's finances involved here too. So, if we get, more finances or more support, there's other areas that we can go to. I mean, and just with my contacts too, I've been approached by people saying, "Hey, if you guys ever explore outside of southern Utah, come here." New England.
There you go.
Some of the Civil War battle locations that that aren't really explored very much. And there's other areas around. So there's a lot of places we can go outside of southern Utah if we do this the right way.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And even though we don't want to bring up, it's not necessarily like us to bring up things like sponsors, but I think it is really important. If you are enjoying the show, there's 2 sponsors that are in constant communication with me right now. They are the 2 that helped us out the most to even get season 1 done. And that was Garrett Metal Detectors and Maglite Flashlights. The other sponsors were great sponsors. They gave us some gear. They gave us an attaboy, but Maglite Flashlights, Garrett Metal Detectors were the guys who really were the ones that gave us that push. They helped us out financially. They helped us out with support. They, like Mark said, they brought out KG, Ringy, and Gypsy. So whatever love you guys can give, if it's liking or subscribing or sharing the videos, or maybe you will be at a Garrett Metal Detector hunt, let's say, and if you are, go up to them and shake their hand. Let them know that you saw Uncharted Expedition, because I can tell you guys right now, if you go out and buy my book, Treasures of the Ancients, you will see that what we have shown so far in episode 1, we're barely scratching the surface of the research and the knowledge and the connections that this team has. And the more, like what you said, Jeff, you try not to make it about views, but unfortunately it is kind of about views. The more that people know about our show, watch it, share it, and spread it around, the more our sponsors are going to help. And that's the point that I can't stress enough. If we get the sponsors to start digging a little deeper, this show is going to be absolutely amazing. And if I told you what budget we were on for the show, I think it would blow everybody's mind. So imagine on a good budget, what we can do.
Yeah. And you guys you truly are putting something together that's really cool on whatever budget you have. And I got to commend you for that. And I'm going to do that very thing when I'm out at Gypsy's event, which is also sponsored by Garrett Metal Detectors. And like I said, Gypsy helped me get this unit right here. That I'm going to be talking to them, and I will do just that. I will thank them for their sponsorship of you and your team, because I think it's important. None of this is free. Even doing this podcast is not free.
Right.
There's a lot of expense that comes in doing this. And I have a few sponsors. I got some patrons, and I appreciate them so very much.
Right.
But you're exactly right. And so go check out his book, check out the links, and check out Garrett Metal Detectors if you're into that sort of thing, and also the other tools that they have as well. So, good question here. If you know the answer to it, I don't. What did they use for fuel for the smelters? And
that depends. That depends on the area. This area, I can say from episode 2 and 3, that smelter alone. So I've seen a lot of different smelters. And it depends on the resources of the area. I can tell you, we didn't show it. There wasn't enough time. My guys don't even, Todd probably knows about this. There's actually, I found evidence of coal being right at the surface on this cliff. And it's not modern day mining. I searched the county records. Nothing has been mined in coal in that whole area since 1872 or newer. So I really wish we had more time. I would have had Todd and Mark and KG and Ringy up there with their melee detectors if we had more time. But I'm almost certain the Spanish, when they found the silver source, they kind of spread out. Just like what I said, they had geologists with them. They were experts in mining. that's another thing to understand. They were experts. Europeans have been mining and doing these techniques for hundreds and hundreds of years. So anyways, I think they found that coal right at the surface, right on that bank, and they were using coal and the cedar trees to power and fuel that smelter. Cedar trees are very strong and they burn very hot.
Yeah. Interesting. Yep. Yeah. I guess it seems, I was just reading a note here from Kat, and again, this gets into some stuff that I'm not, I don't know that much about a smelter, obviously. And she talks about, would there have been a roof system on top of it? Seems dumb to dig for insulating soils and then leave the top open, I guess, or the heat escape. So I really don't know how those things were constructed other than the base of it. Would there have been some sort of a lid or top on the thing? Okay.
I wish I had the picture pulled up. Yeah, I wish I had the picture pulled up in my book.
Like that one.
Sorry, Todd.
You had a picture of us out in front of a lime kiln. Excuse me. Big beehive shaped kiln.
Okay.
That's kind of what the top would have looked like.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, very similar
it's
to
not
that.
exactly the same as a charcoal or lime kiln, but it would have been covered over, and so they could direct and channel that air to get the best airflow through that through that wood or coal or whatever.
Yeah, that was a good question, because that's all that, if we could see what that thing looked like, over a couple hundred years ago, it would have just had that doorway right there, and everything else would have been closed off. And so it would have been, I wish it was more intact. In my book, I do have a picture of a smelter I found not too far away from St. George, and it shows more of a flat roof rather than a cone roof. So again, these smelters weren't the smelters in Maine, Mexico City. They weren't the big, huge ones. A lot of these were filled smelters that we're finding out here. They were made by some Indians, some Spaniards, whoever, if they had slaves or not. And so they're all slightly different. Some of them are really big. Some of them are smaller. It just kind of depends when you're out in the field.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to have to do a little more research of my own on that sort of thing, because that's an interesting how that whole concept works. How they smelt down and burn off all the bad material and then get their silver and stuff out of it. I need to research that, so I get to build my education on that sort of thing. So, wow, this has been a fantastic show. We're at about an hour and a half now, and it's time to start wrapping it up. But I tell you, I could go on and on and on with you guys, because this is fascinating. It truly is. And I gotta commend you for what you guys are doing out there, the history that you're gathering and the way you're documenting everything. I just love it. I think you're doing a good thing. You've got a great team you've put together. And I had one last picture I wanted to show here, and this is showing KG and Ringy there standing there. That's is this KG here? This guy here?
That is KG.
Okay, KG. Of course, that's Mark, and then this is Ringy here, right?
Right.
Great team. I hope to get to meet these. If you, Mark, if you can hook me up so I can have them guys come on the show, and you can join them if you want and come on and talk a little bit about what they're doing in metal detecting. They've been at it for, as you said earlier, a long time. So I'd love to hear what they have to say as well. I hope you get to show them or bring them back and have them join you again.
Yeah, well, let's talk. I'm sure we can get them on your show. I think people would love to hear them. They're great. They're a lot of fun, and they're really good at what they do. So they'd be great on your show.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much.
That's another thing too, real quick. Not only did we bring them on for their knowledge and experience, but we wanted to show the treasure hunting community that working with other people is okay. And in fact, we can do a lot better working together than doing it on our own.
Yep. Takes a village. It really does. Yeah. If people share that stuff, and that's great. And again, like I said, the fact that Gypsy and then, Matt, I was talking with Matt last week, and then all of a sudden Matt comes on and says, oh yeah, he knows you guys too. And it's just like, it's amazing though. But it takes everybody getting together and doing this kind of thing and sharing that information. You can do much more together than you can alone. So There you go.
Very true.
Guys, this has been fantastic. And honestly, when you get episode 4 out and as you're going along in this, Timothy, Todd, Mark, and Chooch, and hopefully Sean. Sometime I'd love to have you back on the show again to kind of let us know the next chapter in what you're doing, because I think what you're doing is fascinating. I think the folks that have been watching here tonight agree. I've seen a lot of good comments coming out from everybody that have been watching, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to come on and share this information with us here tonight.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
Well,
thank
thanks
you,
for
John.
having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. It really is. John, thanks for being here, co-hosting. Yeah,
Always
I
a
know
pleasure.
you're the research team on this whole thing. One of these days we'll get a metal detector in your hands and stuff as well. I know we didn't even get to the point of any kind of paranormal stuff that they find when they're out there, because you get in some of these mines and stuff, there might be some paranormal activity. So, if I get a chance to work with them, I'm going to be bringing that stuff gear along as well.
That's a whole nother story.
That's a whole other.
Make sure make sure that you know that everywhere we go and we're looking for this lost history that's old, some of it's ancient. I have not once come home without bringing something back with me. It gets to the point where I don't even talk about it with my family.
Wow.
We have cameras. I mean, that's a whole nother story, but the paranormal is in my house and I can't get rid of it for 3-4 homes now, and it's follow this. So something I'm doing out in the field is bringing that kind of stuff home. So that's another story, but that's connected.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go, folks, man. We're going to have to have him on BOW, Beyond Our World.
Absolutely.
It keeps getting, it does. It's all part of it. It really does. All right. I'm going to wrap it up, folks. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight and sharing this information. Be sure to pass this around to your friends and family and click on that subscribe button. Click on that notification bell so you know exactly when we're coming out with new content. If you'd like to help support the show, we have our Patreon, patreon.com, and it's jfree906 out there as well. Thank you very much, guys. This has been fantastic. I got to have you back on. We're going to do it. We're going to take it to the next level. Thanks you so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good night. And don't forget, tomorrow night, we're going to be talking Beyond Oak Island again. We're going to be talking about the Peter Easton episode. And we're going to have Bill Smith is going to be here. Tom Burns and I will be here hosting with Bill Smith, who was on the episode of Beyond Oak Island. And Tony Sampson is probably going to stop by and share a little bit of all that. And then Jake Roberts. And they've got some interesting stuff to tie this all together with Oak Island. You're not going to want to miss this show. It's going to be a great one. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you here tomorrow night. Good night.
Good night.
Hang out just a minute, guys, as we close.